Nobody walking into center court that afternoon expected to witness history. That's exactly why what happened next hit as hard as it did. Alexander Eala walked onto center court on July 4th, 2026, facing defending Wimbledon champion, a woman with 6 Grand Slam titles to her name. Nobody in the stands expected anything but a routine victory for Iga Świątek. Then, over the next 2 hours and 14 minutes, everything changed. A 21-year-old from the Philippines dismantled one of the best players on the planet. And by the time it was over, the tennis world was asking the same question. Was this luck, or had this upset been building for months? Center court doesn't just host tennis matches. It swallows people. Legends have walked in fully formed and walked out looking like strangers to themselves, undone by a silence so total it feels like the entire building is holding its breath. On the other side of the net stood a woman who had rarely been broken on this stage. Świątek arrived as a number 3 seed, a 6-time major winner and Olympic bronze medalist, having eased past Karolina Pliskova in straight sets in the second round. Her resume did the intimidating for her before she'd even hit a ball. Eala, meanwhile, was ranked number 32 in the world, career high of number 29, and had never advanced past the second round of Grand Slam before this tournament. Her record in major main draws stood at just 1-5 heading into Wimbledon 2026. No Filipino player, man or woman, had ever reached the round of 16 at a Grand Slam. On paper, this was a mismatch. But upsets never look like upsets before the first ball is struck. They look like mismatches. They look like mercy. And then the opening point begins, and every assumption in the building quietly starts to die. This wasn't the first time these two had shared a court. 16 months earlier, at the 2025 Miami Open, Eala stunned Świątek 6-2, 7-5, a result that transformed her profile back home and turned her into a national sporting sensation, though at the time was filed away by most as a nice story about a promising kid having a good week. Świątek answered a few months later on the clay in Madrid, grinding out a win that restored the natural order, at least on paper. Going into Wimbledon, the head-to-head sat at 1-1, and almost nobody treated it as a pattern. Not yet. There was another layer to Eala's readiness that morning. 2. This wasn't even her first time on center court against a defending champion. She'd been there once before in an earlier debut. The kind of experience that either breaks a young player or quietly builds something inside her that stays. For Eala, it built something. Coaches in the stands who know what to look for weren't watching her forehand in the warm-up. They were watching her eyes. And her eyes weren't asking permission to be there. Part of what made Eala's composure so striking is where her game was actually built. Growing up in the Philippines, she didn't have the option of training on grass courts. Instead, she practiced on a court that doubled as a basketball court. There would be the basketball hoops, so I couldn't really step back a lot, because then I would hit the basketball hoop, she later explained. It's a small detail, but it says everything about the gap between where she started and where she ended up on July 4th. The first set turned into a battle almost immediately. Świątek broke first with a forehand pass clipped right on the line, the kind of shot that makes a crowd settle back into its seats expecting the usual script. Except this time the door wouldn't shut. Eala broke straight back, attacking second serves and pushing the baseline aggressively rather than playing it safe, stepping inside on returns in a way most players her age wouldn't dare attempt against someone this dangerous. Errors from Świątek at the ends of Games 7 and 8 handed Eala a chance to close it out at 5-3. She even held set point. But Świątek did what champions do. 3 consecutive forehand winners, struck with a kind of violent precision that reset the tension right back to 0. Even squandered a break point trying to push ahead, and suddenly there was nothing between them but a tiebreak. The tiebreak became a match of its own. Eala surged to a 5-2 lead built on relentless returning, only for Świątek to claw back to 5-5, then earn 2 set points of her own. Both disappeared. The breaker swung and swung again until it stopped feeling like tennis and started feeling like a standoff nobody wanted to blink first in, until Eala closed out 11-9, forcing one final error out of Świątek's forehand after nearly 90 minutes of tennis. What happened next told you everything about where Eala's head was. No fist pumps to the sky. No roar unleashed at the crowd. She sat down, drank her water, and stared calmly at her team, a woman who had simply done what she came to do and was already thinking about the next 20 minutes. That silence was louder than any celebration could have been, because it said she wasn't done. Not close. By the end of that opening set alone, Świątek's unforced error count had already climbed to 27. Not a lucky set, but a plan working exactly the way it had been drawn up on a practice court weeks earlier. Whenever a challenger builds a lead against a legend, the legend usually adjusts. That's the whole reason they're legends. Świątek tried. She changed the pace on her forehand, rushed forward earlier than usual, attempted every trick that had rescued her from disaster against dozens of opponents before. It didn't work. Eala came out of the break even stronger, breaking the love in the first game and racing to a 4-0 lead before Świątek had settled back into any rhythm at all. Every adjustment Świątek made, Eala seemed to have already anticipated. Świątek clawed one break back to trim the deficit to 4-2, and for a moment the stadium wondered if a real fight was arriving. It wasn't enough. Eala forced a pair of costly double faults, reclaimed the break, and closed it out with a composed hold. Across the whole match, she converted 5 of 7 breakpoint chances, while saving 8 of 11 against her. The kind of conversion gap that decides matches far more than flashy winners do. Every time Świątek tried sneaking to the net to disrupt the rhythm, it backfired. She won less than half of her net approaches all afternoon. Świątek forced one last stand, pushing Eala through a marathon service game. 6 deuces deep, for breakback points fended off one after another. Eala saved every single one. The champion answered the first match point with a clean backhand winner, buying one more breath. It didn't matter. Eala's routine never changed. Same breath, same ball bounce, same stillness that carried her through every previous crisis that afternoon. On her third match point, a forehand winner landed clean. Świątek's reply sailed wide, and center court didn't just clap. It rose. The composure that carried Eala through more than 2 hours of the highest pressure tennis of her life finally broke. She dropped to her knees, then rolled onto her back, overwhelmed by something far bigger than a scoreline. Final score, 7-6, 9, 6-2. The numbers told the story on their own. 24 winners against 21 unforced errors for Eala, compared to 32 winners, but a staggering 44 unforced errors from Świątek, more than double her opponent's error count on the day. Świątek herself was candid about it afterward. Today, I was mis-hitting half of these returns. I lost many points, she told reporters, adding that Eala had simply been braver in the biggest moments. You need to be brave in Wimbledon to win these points. In her on-court interview, Eala could barely get the words out. I'm really emotional, she said. For someone like Iga Świątek, who has won so many Grand Slams, this achievement may seem small, but for someone who grew up in the Philippines, it is huge. She described training after school with her brother and grandfather. With my ruffled socks, light-up shoes, and chubby cheeks, dedicating the win to her countrymen watching in the stands and to every young girl back home who grew up the same way she did. Then, almost as a warning to herself and everyone else, just because I'm emotional does not mean I'm satisfied. Next round, let's go. Back in the Philippines, people had stayed up the night to watch. Refreshing live scores across a brutal time difference for a country that had never seen one of its own reach this deep into a Grand Slam. It wasn't just a tennis match. It was history trying to happen in real time, with no guarantee of a happy ending. By the time the match ended, Eala's Instagram following had jumped past 1.1 million, a number that kept climbing in the days after. Eala's win wasn't even the only seismic result of the afternoon. About an hour earlier, on Court 1, second seed and 2022 champion Elena Rybakina was eliminated in straight sets by Belgium's number 25 seed Elise Mertens, 7-6-4, 6-1. Mertens rode a tiebreak win and a run of 9 straight points in the second set to blow the match apart, later crediting her own self-belief in that tiebreak as the turning point of the match. Rybakina, typically blunt afterward, shrugged off the defeat. It's impossible to win everything. I'm sure I'm still going to keep losing. Her exit guarantee to Aryna Sabalenka would keep her world number 1 ranking through the tournament. Świątek's loss cost her roughly 1,870 ranking points, pushing her toward dropping out of the top 10 for the first time in years. continuing a rocky year that included quarterfinal exits at the Australian Open, Qatar, and Indian Wells, a second-round loss in Miami, and an early exit at Roland Garros. Her own explanation was less about pressure and more about form. I don't care anymore about the results. I need to work from the beginning and try to just get my tennis better. Elsewhere on that same July 4th, Madison Keys rallied past six-seeded Amanda Anisimova in an All-American clash, and Taylor Fritz ground out a four-set win over Lorenzo Sonego to remain the last American man standing. Serena Williams, meanwhile, was forced to withdraw from her doubles match alongside Sister Venus due to a knee injury picked up during her singles return days earlier, writing on Instagram that she was heartbroken to pull out. Eala's reward for the win was a fourth-round meeting with number 13 seed Jasmine Paolini, the 2024 Wimbledon finalist, who'd advanced with a ruthless 6-1, 6-2 win over Maria Sakkari in just 66 minutes. Notably, Eala had already beaten Paolini in straight sets earlier in the year in Dubai, though she wasn't taking anything for granted. It was not an easy match in Dubai for me. It will not be an easy match here either, Eala said before the rematch. Paolini, for her part, seemed almost relieved to talk about someone other than herself. I think that the game of Eala's fits very well to grass. She's playing great. She has a huge crowd with her. It's so good for our sport to involve more people around the world. That's a trait nobody talks about after a win this big. It doesn't buy safety. It buys a bigger target. Eala wasn't the unknown underdog walking into center court unnoticed anymore. Every opponent left in the draw would now prepare specifically for her game, and the pressure would shift from proving. She belonged to proving that beating a six-time major champion wasn't a singular afternoon, but a sign of what she could do again and again on the sport's biggest stages. Whether Alexandra Eala goes on to win Wimbledon or not, nothing can take away what happened on that one unforgettable afternoon. A 21-year-old who once had to dodge a basketball hoop just to practice her backswing walked on the most famous court in tennis, stared down a six-time Grand Slam champion, and changed the history of her country forever.